In this video, we will show you how to replace your brake master cylinder on this Kia Forte Koup. This will be located along the driver's side inside of your engine compartment. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Before we start taking anything apart, it's important to mention, we will have to bleed all of the brakes. Make sure you're in a safe area to do so. You will have to raise and support and remove your wheels to do this. Now with that said, we'll be starting under the hood. Along the driver's side, on the firewall, along the back side of the engine compartment is where you're going to find your master cylinder. To be able to easily remove this, we're going to dislodge the air filter housing from this area. Now in the center of the air inlet tube, you're going to find a breather hose that leads over towards your valve cover. We're going to use some pliers so we can squeeze on this clamp. We'll slide it out of the way. Disconnect the hose from the inlet tube. We'll slide that right off of there. Make sure it's soft and pliable, not torn, worn, or damaged. Now we'll continue following this air inlet tube down along the front of the engine to where it connects onto your throttle body. For this clamp, we'll be using a 10mm. We'll loosen this just enough that we can remove the air inlet tube. Now we can start separating the upper air filter housing from the lower housing. This is held in place with 4 clamps, one on each corner. To dislodge those, just go ahead and grab onto the ear and pry them out of place. We can remove this. Once you have that out of place, the next thing you want to do is go ahead and remove the air filter. A quick inspection. If it looks like it has to be replaced, now's the perfect time to do so. We'll set this aside. Now we can start dislodging the lower air filter housing. This is held in place with 2 10mm headed mounting bolts, one along the front and one along the rear corner here. Take hold of the lower housing. We're going to separate this lower inlet tube here. And at this point, what you're going to find is you have one mounting point down along the corner here. For this, it's fairly simple. Just go ahead and lift straight up on this. Once that's dislodged, we should be able to swing this off towards the side, and we have clear access to our master cylinder. Before we open up the master cylinder, it's a good habit to go ahead and wipe down the area around the cap. We'll lift up the cap. Quick inspection, set it aside. The next thing we want to do is try to remove as much of the fluid from inside of the master cylinder as possible. So when we do go to disconnect our brake fluid lines that lead to the master cylinder, we'll have a minimal amount of fluid making its way out. Brake fluid on your paint can be corrosive and cause an issue. Let's get that cover on there. We'll make our way down to the level sensor. On this, you want to squeeze on the locking tab and pull it out of place. Once you have it dislodged, you need to inspect the wiring harness. If you see any funny colors, that's corrosion and it would need to be dealt with. This one looks fine. We'll set it aside. The next thing I always like to do is put a pad underneath this area, something absorbent, so when we do disconnect the lines, if any fluid makes its way out, it'll get collected, and then of course we can dispose of this properly. Use a 14mm on these lines. Just turn them counterclockwise to remove them. Got a little bit of fluid there. With each of those lines dislodged and inspected, it's time to start removing the master cylinder from that booster. To do this, you're going to find you have 2 12mm headed mounting nuts. There's one along the inboard side here, and the one on the outboard side looks exactly the same. Located just behind that nut, up against the master cylinder, typically you're going to find that you have a lock washer as well. We are going to be reusing that, so you want to remove it and inspect it. That's one side, same on the other side. Go ahead and take hold of that master cylinder. We're going to give it a little wiggle now, trying to separate it from that brake booster. And there it is, friend. Once you have the master cylinder out of the vehicle, the next thing we'll do is pay attention to each of our two brake lines. We're going to thoroughly inspect these. We already gave them a quick inspection, but since that master cylinder is out, we can see a lot more of this area. Make sure the brake line doesn't look like it's rotted or damaged in any way. Same thing for that fitting. We'll move along to the other brake line. Same process here. We're just making sure everything's still in good working order. If anything has to be replaced, it's a good time to do it. Once you've inspected both of those lines, it's time to pay attention to your brake booster here. You want to clean and inspect it. We're going to want to make sure we have a good seal of that master cylinder along the inner port here. So go ahead and give that a quick wipe with a clean rag. We'll also make sure that the base is a smooth surface here. And lastly, what you want to do is just have a quick peek inside this area. If it looks like there's any fluid in there, typically it's due to the master cylinder being bad, and you're going to have to service that. This one looks fine. There's no fluid inside here, so we can continue. Now it's time to install our master cylinder. Before we install this into the vehicle, pay attention down along this area where it will slide into your brake master. That's an O-ring seal, and you want to make sure it's lubricated so it easily slides into place. Just going to use a thin amount of silicone paste here. Bring it right on around. This will also help keep moisture out of the area. Let's start getting this in place. We're going to bring it in towards that brake booster. If you were to look in the center of the brake booster port, you're going to find the push rod that comes from where your brake pedal is on the inside of your passenger compartment. We want to make sure that that slides into the port on the back side of the master cylinder when we bring this into place. With that in place, continue on with your lock washers and your two mounting nuts. We've got our lock washer. That mounting nut on there. Same on the other side. Once you have those started on, go ahead and snug them up. The torque for these is 11 foot-pounds. With the master cylinder mounted to that brake booster, we can start bench bleeding this. What I mean by that is there's a lot of air inside of the master cylinder that we're going to have to bleed out of here before we start forcing any of it out and through the lines leading down to the brakes. To do this, it's easiest if you have a brake line or two and two fittings to go into the brake master. This line will have to go from each port all the way up and inside of the master, down inside, and we need to have the end underneath the brake fluid level. So once we do have our lines in place, we'll be topping off the master cylinder with clean .3 brake fluid. Let's get that cap off of there. Some fluid coming out. With both of the lines secured and the ends deep inside the master cylinder, let's top this off with .3 brake fluid. With the master cylinder topped off, I'm going to hop inside the passenger compartment. I'm going to pump the brakes several times slowly. What should happen here is we're going to force any air from inside the master cylinder up and through these lines. It's going to make its way out here. At the same time as that's happening, the master cylinder will be drawing fluid from inside of the reservoir to fill the entire cylinder area here. We'll be paying attention inside of this port, waiting to see no air coming out as we continue pumping the brakes. Once we see no air, it's properly bled. Now, when taking off these lines, you're typically going to find a lot of brake fluid makes its way out of them. It's a good idea to have a collection receptacle under here. For this, you can tell I just cut an empty oil jug, a nice big hole here. That way there we can recycle all that fluid properly. We'll start dislodging each of these brake lines. Start with the rearward one. Like I said, fluid will come out of these. There we are. Let's get this brake line in here. Use our 14mm wrench, make sure it's nice and tight. Right there's bottomed out. Same process for the other line. Okay. Get that line in place, start it in, snug it up. Okay, right there's bottomed out. Once again, make sure it's nice and snug. Let's top this off and reinstall our cover. Continuing from here, you need to use some parts cleaner and clean up any of this mess. We'll continue on with our level sensor. Press it in, listen for a click. Now it's time to reinstall our air filter housing box. If you were to look at this box, you're going to find in the forward driver's side corner, it has a small locating tab that will press down into its mounting point. Just get everything aligned. Press it down, give it a little wiggle. Let's continue on with our two 10mm headed mounting bolts. We've got the forward one right in this area. This next one's on the rear corner. Let's make sure that we secure this tube along the bottom. It should just press right on there. Install your air filter and your upper air filter housing. Bring this over towards that throttle body. We can rest it right on there. Get this down in position. Lock it in with all 4 locking tabs, one on each corner. Let's get our hose on there. Press that all the way up against. Reinstall the clamp. Make your way down to where it connects onto the throttle body here. You need to make sure you press it all the way up against the throttle body. With that in place, make sure you tighten the 10mm headed mounting clamp. Double check to make sure everything's properly secured. You do not want any dirty air making its way into the engine. Now at this point, it's time to start bleeding the brakes. To do that, you want to safely raise and support and remove the wheels. Moving along, it's time to start removing our wheels. Once you have all of them off of there, make your way back to the right rear. To remove your wheel, we're going to remove all 5 of our 21mm lug nuts and then the wheel. When bleeding the brakes, we'll be starting at the passenger side rear, make our way up to the master cylinder, check that fluid level, and then we'll make our way to the driver's side front. After we're there, back to the master cylinder, to the driver's side rear, and then we'll be ending at the passenger side front wheel. Now to bleed the brakes, it's going to be easiest having a second person. We're going to have that second person up inside the passenger compartment. They're going to pump up the brake pedal approximately 3 to 5 times. Hold it on the last time, let me know. I'm going to open up the bleeder screw and we'll be watching for air and fluid making its way out. We want to make sure we have only clean fluid making its way out, no dirty fluid, and definitely no air. Go ahead and pump up that brake pedal, please. Go ahead and pump. on there. Go ahead and pump. At this point, we finished bleeding the right rear caliper. We're going to reinstall our cover, clean our mess, and as I said before, make our way up to the master cylinder to check that brake fluid level, and we'll meet at the driver's side front. Let's make our way back up under the hood. We're going to check that brake fluid level. If it looks like it's low, go ahead and add some. Okay, from that master cylinder, get this on there. Go ahead and pump up the brake pedal, please. Pump. Go ahead and pump. Okay, we've got clean fluid coming out of here, no air. Let's go ahead and close this off, clean our mess. Clean your mess here, make your way back to that master cylinder, and then we'll meet at the driver's side rear. From the master cylinder, we're over at the driver's side rear now. Let's repeat the process. Get our 10mm collection receptacle. Go ahead and pump up the brake pedal, please. Go ahead and pump. Pump. You can release that. Clean your mess, reinstall your bleeder screw cover, assuming you have one. Make our way back up here. Now from that master cylinder, we're at the passenger side front. Got our wrench and our collection receptacle. Go ahead and pump up the brake pedal, please. Go ahead and pump. Go ahead and pump. Pump. All right, that's just from the hose coming off of there. We'll close this off, clean our mess. Reinstall your bleeder screw cover, assuming you have one. One last quick inspection in this area, and we can reinstall our wheels. Start on all 5 of your 21mm lug nuts. Bottom them out. We'll get the wheels safely back down on the ground, and we can torque these to 80 foot-pounds. Now with the wheels safely on the ground, we're going to torque all the wheels to 80 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. torqued. Once you've completed that, make your way back up under the hood. It looks like our fluid level's already up to the maximum line here, so we're not too worried about it. If you did have to top it off, go ahead and remove the cap, top it off with your clean .3 brake fluid, and reinstall your cap. Just clean up our mess along here. Okay, friend, the last thing you want to do is go ahead and pump up that brake pedal till it's nice and firm one last time, check for leaks, take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.